Good morning. Good morning. Apologies for the lighting. Computer went down last week. Lights just failed. I've no idea why. I've got the light on over my head. I do look a bit dingier than I normally do. There is a manual switch on it, but it won't stay on, as you can see. Uh, See, much richer, but I can't do anything about it. So I'm gonna have to shut the system down later today and get that sorted. Hopefully you can still hear me. You can still see me, but hopefully you can hear me anyway. Gonna say good morning to Chris Hall, who's just arrived. Good morning, gang. Hopefully no gremlins today. Only gremlins in the light. The light is actually linked to my Stream Deck, and my Stream Deck for some reason is just not switching it on. I don't know why. Probably just need to switch things off and switch them back on again. Jim Turner is here as well. Morning, Jim. I guess you two guys are getting ready for plant works tomorrow. Are you going tomorrow, or are you waiting for the middle day? Let me know. Mark Whiting is here as well. And let me press Mark's button as soon as I can find it. I know it's here somewhere. It's that one. Gary Muirhead has just arrived with a question, actually. Let me get to Gary. There we are. Gary said... I can find it. There we are. How was the IDE meeting? It was very good. Yeah, it was very good. I've written about it this morning. I have to say, pleasantly surprised. Demolition conferences and seminars have a nasty habit of being quite dry affairs. Death by PowerPoint. This was most certainly not that. As I say, I've written about it today. You can go and find that over on LinkedIn or on Demolition News or wherever else you care to have a look. Jim Turner is going to Plantworks tomorrow. Well, funnily enough, over on Instagram, Lou Carnage just popped up and says, "Morning from Plantworks." She's already there. So people, if you are going, she's already present and correct. Ken Hatch is here as well. Good morning. He's got the sunshine down in Wales. Good day to Neil Bruce, all the way from New Zealand. What's the weather doing where you are, Neil? Is it winter where you are? Is it summer? Is it spring? I honestly don't know, but let us know. Let us know. And I guess more importantly, Lou Carney, what's the weather doing at Plantworks? I had a very quick look, and it looks like it's going to be okay. But it's Plantworks, and Plantworks is kind of a weather system all of its own. So, Lou, what is the weather update from up where you are? And Ken Hatcher is going on Wednesday. Have a great time, Ken. I'm sure you will. Yes, the IDE. Yeah, very good. Very good. The one thing that did strike me is, and I've written about that, which will be my morning monologue today, is the fact that a lot of the people that should have been there were not. And I don't mean IDE members, because they turned out in fair numbers. They could have been more, always could have been more. But the people that really, really needed to hear the stories that were being told about the demolition industry's innovations and what have you, yeah, not there. They could have done with it. Let's have a look. Gary Muirhead says, sorry, I was planning to go, but couldn't get the time off as I'm stopping on Friday for 2 weeks holiday. Don't blame you at all. Apparently, it is sunny in Plantworks land. That's good to hear for anybody that's going. There's Dan Cullen. And sorry, a little late. Love the new lights. Well, the new lights are actually the wrong lights, which kind of makes me wonder. There's a light in front of my face here that is not working at the moment for reasons that I don't fully understand. Really don't understand that at all. They were working fine yesterday, not working today. I don't know. But it does make me wonder, because we've got this sign here from Gary Muirhead, and we've got that one there, which I claimed it, the YouTube one there. It actually belongs to Fred. Fred got that as a gift for being a where is it? There you are. That there, he's got more than 100,000 subscribers. So have I, but there you are. But you can see them now. You can see them now, which maybe you couldn't before. So maybe I need to tweak the lighting in here. We'll have a look. Apparently, it is spring. Spring has sprung in New Zealand. Spring at the moment, around 18 degrees in Manawatu. I don't know. But and Dan Cullen says it looks better. Makes my face a bit dingy. Maybe it's this. Maybe it's the hat, because I've got rather than having a light in front of me, I've got a light above me. But there you are. But thank you for that. Yes, let's crack on, shall we? Because we've got a lot to get through. I'm going to roll the intro and get this show on the road. Starting, what should we start with? Should we start with the intro like we're supposed to? I think we probably should. Right, okay. What do we got? Dan Cullen saying, "What a weekend!" Yeah, me too. Me too. We kind of came out of left field, and field is very much the operative word in this case. One of my son's friends, he lives on a farm down in uh, Sussex, Surrey border, but he's moving to Devon, so he decided to hold a bit of a party and stuff, and he's a chef. So you knew the food was going to be right. And it turned out that I was there with all of my children in the same place at the same time, which is very, very unusual. So yeah, great time was had by all. Jim says, Lou, did you see the post on Old Girls of Plant Hire I tagged you in about the young fellow that's poorly? Nick Lamb is collecting hats for him. I haven't seen that, but Jim, if Nick Lamb needs a couple of hats from my collection, let me know and I'll hook him up. Looks like you've come up with an idea above your head. Light bulb moment. Yeah, maybe my chair's moved. I don't know. Some content on construction news too. We'll come back to that in a moment. Andy Darvell says no plant works for me, unfortunately. I haven't been to any plant shows for a good few years now. Demo Expo at the Hertfordshire Showground was the last one for me. Yeah, that would be enough to put anyone off, I would have thought. And Neil Bruce says, autumn there, is it? Yes, it is autumn. Although you kind of wouldn't know it. It's quite weird weather at the moment. As I say, I was in a field on a farm on Saturday, and at one point the heavens open, and you think, well, mid to late September, that's kind of what you should expect. Then the sun came out, and it was glorious. There's me stood there in a coat and a hat. Didn't need either of them. Yeah, absolutely gorgeous. Lou says, no, Jim Turner, I didn't. I'll grab a Plantworks cap. You two need to get your heads together. Jim Turner says, I'll send you his postmark. Please do that, Jim. Thank you very much. And Ken said, oh, are you going to Plantworks? But no, I'm not. I am not, I'm afraid. So I'm sure plenty of other people will tell me all about it. It is Monday, the 22nd of September. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition, the Lord High Chancellor of live streaming. In today's show, we're rocking out with, just to be clear, you may have heard some of this before, because this is the show that I was planning to deliver on Thursday last week that I couldn't because the gremlins got into the system. So, in today's show, we're rocking out with Hyundai in Korea. We're going deep on the latest generation wheel loaders from Volvo, and XCMG hits new heights installing a wind turbine. Plus, in my morning monologue today, I've changed this because I've already broadcast and published the other one. Today's morning monologue is called Talking to Ourselves. Yeah, now there is no question of the day today. Instead, we have a bit of a competition. We have a competition called Minute to Win It. Bear with me 1 second. See, a proper professional, we've had this already standing by, but there you are. That's what's up for grabs today. It is a Bobcat telescopic handler. That is a TL43.80HF telescopic handler. Very smart in black, as you can see. Nice scale model there. I don't know what scale that is to. Normally on the box somewhere, but listen, it's a Bobcat model. So, how do you put yourself in with a chance to win that? Very, very simply. You basically type the word Bobcat into the chat. Now, I think most of you know how to spell Bobcat. I think just add Bob and cat, don't leave any spaces. But if you're really struggling, have a look at my hat. That will help. You have precisely, starting now, you have precisely 1 minute to win it.
T-minus 1 minute. T-minus 50 seconds. T-minus 40 seconds. T-minus 30 seconds. T-minus 20 seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Right. Okay. So I listen. I want to be fair and pleasantly minded about this, but Neil Bruce has entered, as you can see there. He also says that needs to come to New Zealand, mate. There's a bit of me that hopes you don't win, Neil, because that's going to cost me an arm and a leg to get it to you. But hey, listen, this is it's an open draw. We shall see. If it goes to you, it goes to you. It will take absolutely forever to get there, but yeah, let's see where we go. Let's do the draw right now. Andy Darvell. Andy Darvell is now the proud owner of one new Bobcat model. Let me have a look. Andy Darvell, Bobcat. Congratulations, Andy. As I say, quite relieved that Neil Bruce didn't win it. Because yeah, that would I'd have had to have sold a lung or something. There's Andy Darvell, really quite pleased about that by the looks of things, which is fantastic news. And there's Gary saying, well done. Peter McKenna, who's just joined us, saying good morning. Well, he says congratulations, Andy Darvell, and he's also said good morning to Jim Turner. Well done, Darv. Yeah, well done, Darv. Popular winner, popular winner. Andy, you know the score. I'm going to need your postal address if you would be so kind. And Neil Bruce clearly has no thought for my bank balance whatsoever. Says bugger. Yeah. Okay. It is time to start the show proper now. I think. Let's go with a bit of this. Now, let me make this look as good as I possibly can, because you know, these things are important. Do I like that one? Do I like that one? Do I like that one? That one's probably the best, I would say. So let me show you exactly what it is that I'm looking at. This is hot news from Construction News, from Construction Inquiry just this morning. The second runway, the construction thereof, has been given the green light. Plans to build a second runway at London's Gatwick Airport have finally got the green light after a decision was delayed in February. Heidi Alexander, Transport Secretary, approved the scheme with conditions on noise abatement and public transport provision. Gatwick Airport said the project is privately financed, requiring no taxpayer money, and is shovel ready. The proposed plans involve shifting the airport's emergency northern runway sideways by 12 metres and upgrading it for regular short haul use rather. This change will allow simultaneous operations on both runways while ensuring compliance with international safety standards. Now, all of that sounds like fantastic news, and you know, £2.2 billion coming into the industry. I think that's a fantastic bit of news. But I'd like to play a little game with you. As I say, according to that news report, this second runway will be delivered at a cost of £2.2 billion. The project is privately financed and will apparently require no taxpayer money, which I've already said. So, given how publicly financed projects like HS2 have a nasty habit of spiralling in cost, do we think that this second runway will be delivered on budget? If it is, what does that say about the government's procurement processes that have allowed such huge cost overruns on projects in the past? And if it isn't, doesn't that mean that even those responsible for costing and delivering these things can't do maths either? I'd like your feedback in the chat. Will the £2.2 billion second runway at Gatwick Airport be delivered on budget? Just type yes or no. I'll have a bit of a count up in just a second. While you're doing that, I'm going to go over to the chat. Have you heard word on the extension of Heathrow Airport? I haven't, and I did wonder. Actually whether that was going to be an either or. I did wonder if it was an either or situation, so I don't really know. Gary Muirhead says, if I'd won it, I was going to ask you to send it to Neil in New Zealand. You bugger. And Peter McKenna says, so something looks different. Lights failed. Peter, that's what's failed. Neil Bruce is obviously enjoying things. Mark's had Botox. There isn't enough Botox in the world to fix this, I'm afraid. Yeah, far too many people find that amusing. Apparently, Andy Thornton reckons that the Gatwick second runway will be delivered on budget. Peter McKenna is agreeing with him. Chris Ford is agreeing with him as well. Jim Turner not agreeing with it. Not sure but doubt it, says Dan Cullen. That's where I am. And Chris Ford, is the Pope a Catholic? Last time I looked, he was indeed a Catholic and American. Who'd have thought it? Who'd have thought we'd have an American? Andy Darvell says, apparently Luton Airport is going to be expanded because of Universal Studios being built just south of Bedford. Any news on that? Not seen a word on that. And Neil Bruce, good man. Thank you very much indeed for all of that. It is time to actually make a start. So let's do a bit of Caterpillar and then we'll get on with the show. Gary Muirhead says, no, Gatwick won't be brought in on budget. Nothing has been brought in on budget yet. No, that seems to be the way. I do get the impression that these big civil engineering projects, it's a case of, well, we'll tell them that much, but the overruns and the extras. Absolutely agree. Jim Turner says, Robbie was the best Pope. And Lou Carney, are you busy, Lou? What, you got things to do? What with the whole exhibition about to open? Apparently she's got to fly. See you soon. Press office is opposite the JCB stand. Joe Hallam Suite, apparently. The Joe Hallam Suite. If you're going along and you need to see Lou, that's where you find her. Opposite the JCB stand in the Joe Hallam Suite. Every single large infrastructure job has overrun on time and budget since history began. I've not checked in that thoroughly, but my guess is he's probably right. And Dan says exactly what I was thinking. I bet it will end up on the taxpayer. Wait and see. There's a bailout just waiting to happen, isn't there? Absolutely right. Now, pray to the gods of live streaming, would you? Because this is the point on Thursday last week where I said I was going to show you something from Hyundai and the lights went out. I say the lights went out, the computer went out. So keep your fingers crossed because Hyundai.
building a comfortable tomorrow.
I think she may have already left, but Jim Turner just said, Lou, look out for a fat beardy man, and I'll look out for a tiny woman that's always talking. In my experience, that doesn't really narrow it down. I think most tiny women, particularly the one that I live with, are always talking. Dan Cullen saying about the Hyundai, great tune, pity about the machines. Ooh. Fighting talk from Dan Cullen. Not a fan of the new Hyundai. Not had much of a play with the latest Hyundais, but listen, you know more about these things than I do, so I'll take your word for it. We've got some. What have we got coming up? Oh, we've got some Volvo coming up. Quite a long one, this one. We're going to go deep on the Volvo. I think it's wheel loaders. Bear with me a second. Let me just go back. Yes, it is. It's Volvo wheel loaders coming up after this.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
Yeah, we've got about 8 minutes coming up now of Volvo next generation wheel loaders. When you see all of the fancy bits and pieces they've got on them, you'll understand why it's 8 minutes long. So pour yourself a cup of coffee, sit back, recline, put your feet up, and let these wash over you.
Hello and welcome. We're joining you from the World of Asphalt trade show in St. Louis, Missouri. I'm Kim Schoep, Product Manager for Sales Training, and joining me is Eric Yeomans, Product Manager for Large Wheel Loaders. We thought this would be a great opportunity to show you a walk around on the new series Large Generation wheel loaders, and behind us is the L260.
The new Gen Large includes the 150, 180, 220 and 260, so we're going to cover all of the updates on all the machines. However, we can't show all of them today, but we certainly can show you all the new updates on this exciting new 260 here. We focused on a lot of areas. We focused on improving or lowering TCO for customers. We improved safety on the machine, and we've also got some new really exciting features when it comes to the drivetrain technology.
So what have we done to improve total cost of ownership with this new series?
Yeah, we have a new exciting feature on the L220 and L260. So standard on the front axle, we have ATC, automatic traction control. So we basically have wet clutches inside the differential that are engaged by the computer. So automatic, you can select in the integrated Volvo Copilot, you can select first gear, forward and reverse, first gear and second gear, forward and reverse, and up to 7 miles an hour it will engage automatically. And then you can press the button on the floor and you can engage it up to 15 miles an hour. And that's going to help reduce tire wear because you're not going to have the wheels spinning, and then also increase productivity. And then we have the rear axle as optional. So that's a big way of reducing total cost of ownership.
Yeah, that sounds like a great improvement. And what about the new dump height we have now?
Yeah, so we introduced this back in November last year. We increased or lengthened the hydraulic lift cylinders, and you get an extra 4.7 inches for the standard boom and 5.1 for the long boom. The hydraulic pump flow is now on the L150 and L180, so we're going from 48 to 67, and then we're going from 57 to 67 gallons per minute. And that increased hydraulic pump flow is going to reduce the cycle times and increase productivity.
All right, Eric, you've mentioned that the cab has a lot of new updates. Let's talk about those.
Yeah, better still, let's actually go up and have a look at these new updates now. So, well, welcome to the new cab. As you see here, it's a totally different look compared to our previous series machines. We've taken away several functions from the A-posts. They're now integrated into the integrated Volvo Copilot. You'll see we have a whole new HMI, a whole new display. This is the new dynamic instrument cluster. The keypad is now removed, so all the functions that were down here in the keypad is now incorporated into the integrated Volvo Copilot. So we're going to come back later and do another video and go through all the screens, but I just love the new. It's just so intuitive, it's so modern, it's so much easier. There's a lot of new, really cool functions and features in the Copilot. As you know, we've had the orange handrails and steps for quite a long time now, helping the operator to identify where they should be when they're entering and exiting the cab now. So these are the new handrails. They're bolt on. On the other side of the machine, we have a new entrance for the operator to climb up safely into the platform at the front of the cab, so that's part of improving our safety. An operator has to get out and clean the mirrors and clean the windshield. Technician has to replace the windshield wiper, so now the operator will climb up here, step across to there, always maintaining 3 points of contact. He would clip his safety harness here on the safety hook there on the corner of the cab, clean the windshield, do everything safely, then climb back down on the machine. I just like the whole new look of the cab. There's a lot more updates inside the cab, obviously, but the exterior looks really modern. It looks like a really fresh look. I'm really excited about it. We also have the 360 bird's eye view camera now available as an option, again improving operator safety.
Very good. Okay, Eric, this machine has a whole new look. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I mean, you saw the cab and how good that looks. So we also improved the rear of the machine. We have the new grille. We have the new Volvo word mark here as well.
What about this?
Yeah, that's our radar sensor. So we use that to activate collision mitigation, where we actively activate the brakes when the machine gets in that red zone. But we've done also some improvements again as a commitment to safety. So we have this new inhibitor start. So if you reverse up to an object and the machine recognizes there, you park the machine, then you go in reverse, the system memorizes that there's an object behind, so it won't let you go in reverse. So that's a really improvement. But what I really like now is when you open it, check out the new service light. This is really good. It's going to make it easier for operators when they're filling machines, because most of these machines work a couple of shifts, so it's much easier for the operator to fill the machine.
Yeah, that's a great service feature. So there's a lot of new operators in our industry too. Is there anything that we've done that'll assist them with maybe filling their buckets and being productive?
We have auto bucket fill now available as an option on the 150 to 260. So what that basically does is, as you're going into the pile, you lower the bucket to ground, you hold the kickdown button on the hydraulic lift lever for more than 2 seconds. That activates the function. Then the machine takes over the throttle function, the lift and bucket operation, and it basically you're loading consistently, and then because we're controlling the engine RPM, we're maximizing the fuel efficiency in the machine as well. And one thing I like was it's very, very consistent, very easy to use.
You've mentioned something about this fuel priming pump. It used to be a manual process, but this does not look manual.
No, this is now electric, so you basically press this, hold it down, so probably 3 to 4 minutes, open up the bleed nipple up on top of the fuel filter, and it bleeds the fuel system automatically. Much quicker than priming or using the old manual hand pump.
Absolutely.
And you'll also see now we have the new captive fuel filters and engine oil filters, and that's going to be good for the environment. It's much easier to dispose of those filters instead of the spin-on type filter.
Sure. Okay, so the lockout tagout is no longer in this location. Can you tell us about that and why?
Yeah, correct. I mean, we used to always have the lockout tagout in here, but now we basically have the battery disconnect incorporated in the ignition key. We've had that on the 350. The smaller machines have it. The articulated haulers have had it for years. So we've gone to that new technology, and because of that, we've gone to a new service our new service lockout tagout on this side. So let's go around and have a look at it on the other side.
Okay, let's take a look.
Here we go, Kimberly. Here's the new service box. There's your new lockout tagout here. You have your jump start poles. You have your ISO jump start, the optional one here. And then inside here we have your main fuses. So everything is in one box in the same area. Going to make it easier for technicians that are working on a machine, and then especially for the lockout tagout, it's much easier.
Very good, and important to note that the new location is here, not on the other side where it had been.
Correct.
All right, Eric, so we've talked about TCO, productivity, but has there been anything new that will really lower fuel consumption?
A great question. Yeah, we actually have a new feature called Smart Control. So what we're actually doing is we're taking over the throttle function, and we're also taking over the rim pull function in second gear and upwards. And the tests we have done that we've seen savings of up to 4% in just pure fuel consumption. So that's quite exciting.
It is.
And then on the 150 and 180, we actually have a new direct lockup from third gear to fourth gear, direct lockup to lockup. So the sooner you can activate that, the less fuel you're going to burn. If you run in normal converter mode, you're probably going to burn 15% more fuel. So we're engaging that lockup. We're jumping straight from third gear lockup to fourth gear lockup. And that's also going to reduce or lower your fuel consumption.
So we hope you enjoyed that walk around on the new Gen large wheel loaders, and stay tuned for more.
Thank you very much.
Very interesting to watch the chat while that was going on. I do want to go back. Dan Cullen, not a fan of the Hyundai. Chris Ford, bringing a bit of balance to things. Nothing wrong with the Hyundai. Ours, he says, tempting fate, has been very reliable. That was my understanding, certainly. Andy Dalvell says, like the door opening on a fob, very swish. Yep, that's handy. I could definitely do with another 4 or 5 inches. Less said about that, the better. Andy Dalvell says the cab looks great. Cabs on the Volvo machines are very, very smart indeed. Now, Neil Bruce saying, cool video. Thank you very much as well. Yeah, all good stuff. Here's the point. Dan Cullen, first of all, says, auto bucket fill will make operators lazy. Fair point. Jim Turner says, Jesus, the lad won't like all those drive rates. When they had the Liebherr on test, he said all the gizmos on it slowed it down or slowed down the work rate. Interesting, right? Interesting. Here's the other point. Andy Thornton says this. Why is the 360-degree camera for safety an option? So you get auto bucket fill and you get, all the fancy schmancy fob opening and everything else, which, lovely to have. But safety cameras, still an option. And this is, let me be absolutely clear here, full well, I am a huge fan of Volvo. I think Volvo makes some of the best machines on the market, but this is a universal thing. This is across the board. I think all manufacturers are guilty of this. They give you all these new gizmos and gadgets and all these other things, which they think will make you more productive, reduce your fuel consumption, improve your operator comfort, and all of those kind of things. They are thrown in as part of the package. But if you want collision avoidance systems, cameras, and all that, it's an extra. You've got to pay extra for it. Is that right? Is that right? Now, I don't know what this has got to do with anything, but I'm going to play it anyway. Peter McKenna says, a blue whale's butthole can stretch to approximately 3.5 feet. Who knew? Making it the second largest asshole on the planet next to Keir Starmer. I can think of an even bigger one. But that's what, in actual fact, I could draw up a list. But yeah, 3.5 feet. Who knew? Who knew? You wouldn't want to be experiencing the backdraft from that. Mick Norton has just joined us. Morning, Mick. Good of you to join us. Thank you very much indeed for being here. We've got one more film to play you, and then it's morning monologue time. So I'll be back after that.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
You see, now this is the kind of thing I was talking about. Peter McKenna says, air conditioning is still an option on some vehicles. I think we'd all like it. I do think we'd all like it. And I think if you're going to be spending 8, 9, 10, 11 hours a day in a machine, you probably deserve it as well. But air conditioning is a nice to have. Even if you haven't got it, you can open the windows, open the door. You've got options. Whereas personally, I think anything safety related is not nice to have. It's a must have, surely. Answers in the chat. Am I talking bollocks? It wouldn't be the first time, let's be absolutely honest. Yes, we're Gary Muirhead, and I realise you don't get involved in the cranes and stuff, although Andy Dalvell most certainly does. So this is kind of for both of you. Installation of wind turbines, XCMG crane style. Right, going back to I was saying about air conditioning being a bit of an optional extra and maybe not such a bad thing. Peter McKenna says, safety, you have eyes, not in the back of my head, I don't. Not in the back of my head, I don't. Dan Cullen says, Sunbelt machines don't come with air conditioning. Is that right? That's where they've stripped out a bit of cost, I guess. Chris Ford said, air conditioning was good on the shovel when it worked, and so was the heater. Maybe you should swap with our friend Jim, because he says the aircon's wasted on me. I always have the door or windows open. Dan Cullen, not Dan Cullen. Yes, it's Dan Cullen's rather. Enjoying the crane. Mick Nolt says crane erectors are often the unsung heroes. Wouldn't argue with that. Andy Darvell says, Jesus, that's some wind turbine. I was thinking, why are they building a tower crane with a crawler to build it? And then I saw the size. That's a proper beast. Yeah, they don't mess about in China, do they? Yeah, if you're going to harness the wind, harness all of it, every last ounce. Do you weigh wind in ounces? I honestly don't know. Anyway, people, that's about it for the main part of this morning show. Glad that the internet held out, even if the light isn't working. I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before our leaping gazelle-like over into my morning monologue. If you can't stick around for that, please stay safe. Look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. Hope to see you again very soon. But if you do have the time and the inclination, I will return immediately after this. According to both Google and ChatGPT, talking to yourself is not just normal, it's actually healthy. It can improve memory and motivation and help regulate your emotions. All very different when I was a kid. Back in the day, we used to say that talking to yourself was the first sign of madness. The second sign of madness was listening. To this day, if I'm walking down the street and I see someone coming towards me talking to themselves loudly, excitedly, or angrily, I'm giving them a wide berth, which is kind of ironic, given that the various elements of the demolition and construction industry are forever talking to themselves loudly, excitedly, or angrily. I've attended conferences in which architects have spoken excitedly about sustainability, but those that will ultimately be required to make good on that sustainability promise, the demolition contractors, are not just absent from the audience. They were never consulted on the architect's ambitious aims in the first place. I've heard government ministers speaking about the abolition of diesel fuel to meet admittedly admirable net zero targets. But the people currently using diesel fueled machines are nowhere to be seen, and their opinion has never been sought. I've seen equipment manufacturers add countless gadgets and gizmos to their machines without once asking operators whether they're happy with a few buttons and dials, or if they really would prefer to spend their days on the flight deck of the Starship Enterprise. Most recently, I've heard environmentalists and government ministers calling for an end to any and all demolition, lest it destroy their precious embodied carbon. Oddly enough, they never do that in front of an audience of demolition contractors that might burst their big green bubble with a few facts. I was reminded of the industry's willingness to talk to itself on Friday last week when I attended the autumn seminar of the Institute of Demolition Engineers. Presentation after presentation, speech after speech, the guest speakers demonstrated that they were solving problems that clients and main contractors hadn't even created yet. A reusable modular facade retention system made entirely from reclaimed steel. Methods for reclaiming entire structural elements during demolition so they could be used in other buildings. And artificial intelligence to fulfill tiresome, tedious, and labour-intensive tender applications. And yet, for all the innovation on display, the speakers were in many ways preaching to the choir. Yes, I'm sure that many of the 100+ demolition engineers gathered at the Institute of Civil Engineers left feeling inspired. I'm sure many of them will now be leafing through brochures and figuring out how they might deploy some of what they learned during the day. And yet, as is so often the case, those that really needed to hear all this were notable by their absence. The architects weren't there to hear how they are designing buildings today that will be problematic to demolish in 30 or 40 years' time. The specifiers weren't there to learn how their choice of materials today will have a negative impact upon sustainability of that building when it reaches the end of its natural life. The clients and contractors weren't there either. And so they will continue to make ridiculous demands, ill-informed decisions, and costly mistakes that could have been avoided by closer consultation with the demolition experts. And most frustratingly of all, those missing architects, specifiers, clients, and main contractors didn't get to see what the modern demolition contractor really looks like. They're not sitting on their hands waiting to be told what to do next. They're not waiting for problems to arrive before hastily devising a solution. They're looking ahead. They're scanning the industry horizon. They're preempting future challenges before they arise. And they're devising solutions to problems that haven't even been invented yet. Unfortunately, the gap between those speaking and those listening is the space where problems breed and proliferate. Until we can bridge that gap, those problems will continue to emerge, even if the solution already exists. It's crazy, right? When I was a child, we used to say that talking to yourself is the first sign of madness. We now live in an age in which we're a bit more enlightened. We don't say that anymore. But maybe those people talking to themselves weren't ever actually mad in the first place. Maybe they just had some really amazing ideas and innovative solutions, and no one was listening. There you are. Frustrating. Honestly, best demolition conference seminar I've been to in quite some time. Some of the innovations on display, but literally mind-boggling. The facade retention system that I mentioned there didn't look like the top-down way, but kind of reminded me of it. It was from McGee's, and McGee's had looked at the notion of facade retention, and all the props that are needed, and and a lot of it is temporary works that become permanent works, and it's a very sort of labor-intensive, material-intensive, difficult process. So the McGee engineers went away. They got a load of steel from ERM, so reusing steel, so great for sustainability. And they've built a modular system. So if you're retaining a facade, you basically bolt this to the facade that's being retained. It props the building up while you're doing whatever else needs to be done. And then when you're finished, you take it all apart and you put it back on a wagon, and you can use it again the following day, the following week. Simple, but effective. Absolutely top notch. The people that need to know that, the architects, the designers, the clients, main contractors, nowhere to be seen. So as far as they're concerned, anything that requires facade retention is still hundreds of props at enormous expense and everything else. Nope, not necessarily. Not necessarily. There is a solution, but those people are unaware of that solution because they don't go to these kind of events. And let me be clear here. This is not a problem of the IDE's making. I'm sure that the Institute would have welcomed architects and specifiers and main contractors with open arms. It's that they don't do that cross-pollination. They don't go, we don't go to architectural conferences. Architects don't come to our conferences. So there is a gap between the two. If you remember rightly, when I interviewed VJ Nerv, ex of Bobcat, some time ago, and he's a very forward-thinking, futurist kind of guy, very into his AI and all of those kind of things. But rather than studying just construction equipment and construction equipment companies, he was looking for inspiration in the most bizarre places. Like, I remember him saying the pharmaceutical industry as one, but also the crypto industry. Is there anything we could learn from the crypto industry that we could apply here? For example, the whole on-the-go payment for added features on machines or for rental and that kind of thing. What could you learn from the pharmaceutical industry? What could you learn from the automotive sector? I know Dan Cullen put in the chat earlier when we were talking about those Volvo wheel loaders. He was talking about automotive style seat belts. So obviously, the manufacturers of Volvo equipment, JCB, Caterpillar, Komatsu, they're looking very closely at what's happening over in the automotive sector, because the two, let's face it, wheel at each corner by and large, steering wheel in the middle. So there are obvious similarities. But what about those other bits and pieces that are going on there? And unfortunately, I think as an industry, we we like to operate in silos. We do like to operate in silos. And I'll go even further than that, and hopefully none of them are watching. But I was at the IDE seminar. As I say, there was 100 plus demolition engineers crammed into a conference room. But we broke for lunch. And we broke for lunch, and everyone's sort of milling about, and we're all eating our food, which was very nice, and trying to catch up with people we hadn't seen before, and all that kind of thing. And over in one corner, there was a little knot of people from the NFDC who kind of stuck to themselves. It's weird, isn't it? It's the demolition people kind of talking to themselves rather than talking to others in the industry. Seems awfully odd. And yet, the crazy thing with all of this, thinking about McGee's, for example, Kelp Bray did a good presentation as well. They're not there to sell their wares. For example, that facade retention system, it's only available currently. It's only available for McGee's. They've devised it, and they're deploying it. Yes, they may well hire it out at some point. Somebody else may take it and run with it. It might even end up as a rental item at some point. But as it stands at the moment, they've devised it. But rather than this is our secret, we're not going to tell you anything about it. They've come to a gathering of their competitors and said, this might make your life easier. What we've done here, it might make you cleaner and greener and more sustainable, reduce your carbon footprint. They're doing their bit to make the industry better, but the people that need to understand that the industry is actually better and they're coming up with those innovations and those new systems, nowhere to be seen. I'll say it again, a little silo over here. Here's your architect, here's your specifiers, here's your tier ones, here's your plant hirers, here's your demolition contractors. How about speaking to each other? Just a thought. What do we got in the chat here? We have got, I pressed the wrong button. Andy Thornton says, these days you can't tell if someone is talking to themselves or have a Bluetooth earpiece. Can I let you in on a little secret? This is I won't be able to use this after I've said this, I suppose, but I'm going to say it anyway. Sometimes when I go to exhibitions and conferences and seminars, I actually leave my AirPods in. They're not actually serving a purpose. It's just so if somebody comes up to me and I can't be asked, I just go, I'm on the phone. I do. I didn't do that Friday. I'll be honest with you. I didn't do that on Friday, but I do that. So if you do see me with my AirPods in, I may or may not be on the phone or listening to music. I may just be giving you a deliberate wide berth. Andy says, I'm sure the whole construction industry can learn from other industries on health and safety and well-being. Yeah, absolutely. And not just that. I mean, I know we've had we've made a few efforts. Excuse me. We've made a few efforts to employ within the demolition industry ex-armed forces people, and because they, in the nicest possible way, they're very good at following orders. Do this at that time this way, and that's what they'll do because that's the way they've been trained. But what else could we learn from them? Education is not a one-way street, it should be a two-way. So what are those people, those ex-armed forces people coming into our industry? Are we actually taking them to one side at any point and saying to them, see that thing that we're doing here? Could we do that better? Is there anything that that we could be doing better with this? Even things like, I mean, outside the sporting arena, and I would say probably even including the sporting arena, nobody does teamwork quite like the military, because frankly, if you're in the military and you are part of a team or a squadron or a battalion, or a regiment, your very well-being, your very existence is dependent upon the guys to your left, to your right, behind you and in front of you. Nobody does teamwork quite like that. What do we rely upon in this industry? Demolition, construction, we rely upon teamwork. Has anybody ever thought of actually employing even as a consultant, a sergeant major, and saying, we need to make sure that everyone is moving in the right direction. For example, I'm just riffing right now, but imagine your shouty sergeant major. What was the fella's name? Out of it, ain't I thought, I can't remember his name. Windsor, was it Windsor Davis? Windsor somebody? Yeah. Just imagine a shouty sergeant major delivering a toolbox talk, and over in the background, there's matey sat there looking at Facebook on his phone, or there's somebody in the background who quite clearly doesn't understand, because there's a language barrier, quite clearly doesn't understand what is being said. How do you think that a modern sergeant major would respond to that? Would he just let that go, or would he explode? And if he exploded, would that be better for everyone? Personally, I believe it would. Andy Thornton says, bear with me. It was the Marines who came up with TRIM, a trauma risk management system, now adopted by the police, amongst others. Trauma risk management. What is trauma risk? I mean, I'm guessing it's as it says, managing the risk of trauma. I assume. I've not heard of that before, but if you'd like to educate, elucidate, expand, any of those things, if you'd like to tell us more about that, I'd love to hear it. Why do we operate in silos? I remember back in the day when I was working more actively with the NFDC, rather than in direct opposition to them. I do remember I think it was their first demo day. They decided to gather a bunch of people together at was it Kempton? No, Sandown Park Racecourse, just up the road from me. So took it over, and we had exhibitors there, and we had guest speakers and everything else. And I remember distinctly Howard Button, the then CEO, stood up at a meeting a good few months before and said to the gathered masses of NFDC members, in order for this to work, we need you to bring along your clients. We need your clients to understand why an NFDC member is better than a non-NFDC member. They need to understand, all of the work that we put in behind the scenes to make our members better and everything else. And, the assembled masses all just nodded. Yeah, absolutely. And you went into the bar afterwards and they were, bollocks if I'm bringing my clients along so that other people might steal them. So as a result, the demo day went ahead, very successful, but there wasn't a fucking client there, because everyone was so terrified of losing a client that they'd worked months and possibly years, even decades, to nurture. And he says, if a man dies on the job, it's not only the family affected, it assesses and deals with ramifications to colleagues, responders, and witnesses. Now, there is a thing that should be deployed within the demolition and construction industry. I do worry about that. I actually asked, I think my podcast with Steve Kerslake is probably due out this week. I don't know, but I think it probably is. That was one of the questions I asked him. I think he was the first to bring to my attention the fact that a guy had taken his own life on a mace site. I think it was in London somewhere. And they'd closed the site, which I thought was, the right thing to do. I think it's the respectful thing to do. And it's probably the caring thing to do. If all of your colleagues have just witnessed somebody committing suicide, I think they probably deserve to be taken to one side and so on. How long does a site remain closed? Not just for a suicide, but also for a fatal accident. Is it a day? Is it a week? And how do you go back to work? If they close that site, let's say that happened on a Tuesday. If they closed it on a Tuesday, do you go back to work on a Wednesday? Does anybody talk about it? Do they take them to one side and say, we need to have a chat about this? Is everybody okay? We've brought in a counsellor. If anyone would like to speak, do they do that? If anybody got any experience of that, I'd love to hear from you. Dan Cullen says, NFDC 1 day, 2 max possibly. Is that shutdown time? It probably is, I think. Yeah. Yeah, and does everyone just get on with it? I don't know, but I'd love to hear from it. I think it was on a Sports in Construction vlog. I heard it cost the industry 1.5 million for each suicide on site. So there were 500 in the last, well, more than 500, about 560, I think, in the last year in which it was calculated. So 560, let's call it 600 million, 900 million. Best part of £1 million, the cost of suicide to the industry. That's not cheap, is it? And as I say, I mean, I've got to be honest, I don't actually care about the financial cost. I was thinking more about the emotional and mental support. Dan Cullen says, more worried about finishing than the guys on site. Yep, it is hard to argue with that. It is very hard to argue. And doesn't that take us back to, as I say, this is not a criticism of Volvo. I will make that very clear. I consider myself to be a Volvo fan. But we've got an industry, that little bit of the industry, the construction equipment industry. We've added a fancy new seat. It's in the price. We've added a new place to put your coffee cup. It's in the price. You've got a brand new screen in front of you that tells you all your functions. That's in the price. You'd like safety cameras. Oh, now see, that's going to cost you more money. Does that not prove the point that Dan has just made there? We want to save fuel. We want to improve productivity. Safety would be nice. Mick Milton says, today's military suffers the same trends that have undermined the civilian counterparts. Wokery, lack of funding, lack of practical experience, and questionable leadership. Having never served, and to be honest, since I was about 17 years old, never really had much to do with anyone that's been in the military. I don't know why that is. Just happens to be the case. A mate, an old school friend of mine, went off. I think I've told you this before. Bizarre. I grew up in South London and then moved to Surrey, and most of my friends were either from London or they were from Surrey, and we all speak with roughly this accent, including my mate John Logan, who was in my school football team. He went off for a couple of years, did a couple of tours over in Northern Ireland, but he was the group that he was with, I can never remember whether it was a regiment or whatever, but the group that he was with were almost entirely Geordies. He came back with a Geordie accent in 2 years. He really did. I hate putting a number on it, but a fraction of that dedicated to saving lives would not be a bad idea. Yeah, prevention better than cure, and considerably cheaper, I would say. You'd think. The problem with things like that is there's always that. It's like, should I bother with, for example, should you bother with travel insurance? 99 times out of 100, the airlines won't lose your baggage. 99 times out of 100, your phone won't get stolen while you're walking through some piazza in Rome. 99 times out of 100, you won't have a medical emergency while you're in Torremolinos. But you take out the medical insurance, or you take out travel insurance just in case. I think we operate like a reverse of that with things like mental health and safety as well. Yeah, we could, but what are the chances? What are the chances that somebody's going to off themselves on one of our sites? What are the chances that somebody's going to reverse over a car or a pedestrian or a fellow worker? Yeah, keep the money in the bin. That's the truth of the matter. Anywho, people, I have other things to which to attend. We've got a full suite of, well, assuming the internet holds up, full suite of shows this week, and we've got a full suite of shows the week after that. And then I'm off to America, which is probably why the whole travel insurance thing was at the forefront of my mind. We're taking about $7,000 worth of camera equipment. I'll be taking travel insurance. Don't you worry about it. But we will be back. What's the chance of them saying I didn't see him? Not a defense, is it? And Here's another thing. I don't actually know where we stand on this because this is not an area of expertise, but I will ask the question. If you were offered let's say a wheel loader, you were offered a wheel loader with reversing cameras at an extra cost, and you said, they seem fantastic, I really appreciate the offer, but I'll pass, thank you. And you take a wheel loader without reversing cameras. And sometime during the lifetime of that wheel loader on site, it reverses over one of your friends, one of your colleagues, and kills them. There's a paper trail there. Now, I realise that reversing cameras are not a legal requirement, but there is a paper trail there that says you were offered a safety system that could have prevented that accident, and you chose not to use it. Where do you stand on that legally? Where do you stand on that legally? Mick Norton says, when I first qualified as a military plant operator in the Royal Engineers in 1973, but he actually says it's 1963 in a minute, there were thousands similarly qualified worldwide. Fast forward 62 years, and the same Royal Engineers has only 308 plant operators. QED, and there he is saying, delete 1973, insert 1963. Why aren't they a legal requirement on plant? Why aren't they a legal requirement on plant? Again, every time I mention cameras, I say exactly the same thing. I sound like a broken record. If you were to segregate men and machines properly and effectively, you wouldn't need reversing cameras. You wouldn't need accident avoidance and collision avoidance systems, because there wouldn't be any. You'd have machines there, men there, never the twain shall meet. Everyone gets on with their lives and goes home to their wives and families at the end of the day. But given the fact that we flatly refuse to do that, should we not? Should they not be a legal requirement? Andy Thornton said it should never happen. It's the responsibility of the manufacturers to make it standard. They're not expensive. No, they're not. No, they're not. It does make some extra dosh. Is it greed? Yes. Everything. And this is not peculiar to demolition and construction. Everything in the commercial world is driven by greed. It just is. I don't like it. I'm not a fan of it, but it just is. Everything is driven by greed. And on that bombshell, Andy Darvell, please don't forget to let me have your postal address, because I've got to get that in the post for you. Thankfully, not going to New Zealand. Everybody, have a fantastic day. Back tomorrow, 10 a.m. for yet more of the same. Until then, look after yourselves, behave yourselves. Just be here tomorrow. That's all I ask.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.